Abby, are you good to go?
And you are recording.
All right. Well, I want to welcome everyone to today's Wild Eats program. This is the third in the series. Today we'll be talking about fish. If you have any questions at any point, please type them into the chat and we will make sure Abby is aware of them and can answer them in a timely manner. But without further ado, I'll introduce our presenter today, Abby Sampson. She is the Health and Human Sciences educator for Purdue Extension in Putnam County, and she is a registered dietitian.
Thank you, Jenna. So for those of you who have followed along, this is our third webinar in our series of Wild Eats. And this week we are going to be talking about fish. And like Jenna said, we are recording for those who aren't able to attend live or if you want to go back. And so with that recording, you are more than welcome when we get to the end and do a Q&A. If you have a question and would like to unmute yourself, you're more than welcome. But your voice and potentially your video will be recorded, but you're also more than welcome to just put something in the chat box. And so starting off, I like to let everyone know that we will have a voluntary and anonymous survey at the end. And that's just an opportunity for us at Extension to report to our funders like the USDA. Since we are a land-grant university, a lot of what we do goes back to the state and to the USDA to show the impact that we make. And your feedback is very important to us. And so that's why we do have voluntary and anonymous surveys. I'm also going to launch a poll, and it's a demographic poll, and you are not obligated to fill this out. It's just going to ask your gender, your ethnicity, and your race. If you would not mind to fill that out for us, it would be greatly appreciated. And so while you are filling that out, we will go over what we are going to cover today. And it's very similar to our other weeks, besides we are concentrating on fish. So we're going to talk about the food safety with fish, preparation methods best for fish, and then cooking methods and nutrition composition. But with that, I do want to make a disclaimer that I am going to do my best today to only concentrate on common fish found in fresh water here in West Central Indiana. And so I know a lot of you might not be coming from here, but of course, we have these fish all over the place. And so that is just what we're going to be concentrating on for the most part today. And so starting with food safety, you have seen this photo before, but we really want to, with food safety, understand that any perishable meats like fish, poultry, and red meats can contain harmful bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli. And that can be found on raw or undercooked game foods and fish. And so that's really what we're talking about when we talk about food safety, is getting that under control. And to get that under control, we want to concentrate on the 4 words of clean, separate, cook, and chill. And so we want to have clean hands and clean surfaces. So talking about preparing fish and processing it, we want to make sure, like if you process fish at home and you're dressing the fish, you're more than likely touching a fillet knife, a cutting board, a faucet handle, a doorknob. And so you're spreading bacteria and germs wherever you're touching. And so you're more than likely going to need to wash and rinse your hands several times during the cleaning process of the fish. And then with separating, we want to keep our raw meat separate from other foods. So in the on the countertops, we want to keep it separate, but also in the refrigerator, we want to make sure that it's not going to leak onto any other foods. We're going to cook to the right temperature, so we'll talk about that in a few more slides. And we'll also talk about refrigerating food properly, because fish is slightly different than the other wild games meats that we've talked about when we're talking about leftovers and freezing. But overall, we do want to keep our game out of the danger zone, so out of 41 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to either keep it cold below 41 or we want to keep it hot above 135. Keeping it in that danger zone allows for bacteria to grow more rapidly than any other area on a thermometer. And also with that, if cross-contamination is occurring on raw meat, it can potentially grow even more when it's in that temperature range. So that's why we want to make sure that we are cooking to the correct internal temperature. And so talking about our hands, when we're dressing fish, when you should wash your hands is really quite often. You should be washing before, during, and after preparing the food. If you're not at home or not at a place with good, clean running water, you should prepare to bring potable, clean water, maybe some hand sanitizer as well as a backup. So that way you are doing your best to keep your hands and the meat that you're preparing clean. And so how you're going to wash your hands, of course, you can bring hand sanitizer out to the field with you, but the best is soap and water. And we're going to just wet our hands with clean running water, apply the soap, make sure that we're going to lather the back of our hands between our fingers and scrub our hands for about 20 seconds. And then we're going to rinse and dry. And that might seem like a process that's so simple, but that's just one simple step that you can take to help prevent any foodborne illnesses or cross-contamination occurring by taking that 20 to 30 seconds to clean your hands well. So now that we've gone over food safety, we're going to start with before we even go out fishing. So there are some questions that you can ask yourself to get prepared before you set sail. And so if you're planning on keeping the fish, you might need to question yourself if you have the right equipment or know how to clean the fish. You know, do you have a sharp fillet knife? Do you have a processing guide or at least the knowledge? Maybe a stringer or a live well to keep your fish fresh. And you're also going to need to check if you have a way to keep your fish cold and fresh, like a cooler, or what your plan is with keeping it on ice. Also, you're going to want to ask yourself if you've checked the water quality and fish consumption safety guidelines for the waters that you're going to be fishing in. It is your responsibility as a fisherman or a fisherwoman to check those guidelines. And we are going to spend a couple of minutes actually talking about how to know if the water that you're fishing in has fish that's safe for consumption later on. And then lastly, do you have a plan to incorporate the fish into part of a meal plan? So if you do, that's great. Fish is a great thing to have in your diet, but you're going to want to make sure that you have the proper materials on hand after you process that fish to store it in the fridge or the freezer safely. And so when we catch our fish and we are keeping it, we first need to talk about selecting our fish. And so we want to avoid fish with loose scales, sunken eyes, discolored skin, or any white, bloody, or slimy gills. Really, the fish we want to keep have bright, clear red eyes and red gills. They have bright, clear eyes and they have red gills. And so also you've probably heard mercury come up when we're talking about fish consumption. And so the size and species of a fish can impact how much mercury you're exposed to. And to explain it very basically, smaller fish on the food chain, like bluegill, tend to have a very low mercury level. And then fish that are on the higher end of the food chain, so larger fish that eat the smaller fish, like catfish and walleye, they more than likely have a higher mercury level than the smaller fish. And so, like I said, we're going to check the Indiana Fish Consumption Advisory before eating any local fish, and going to learn about how to reduce our exposure to any potential contaminants. So you can see on this slide a couple of screenshots that I took from our Indiana Fish Consumption Advisory websites. But the fish consumption advisories are intended for recreational fishers. The information provided by these advisories is specific to the catch location and the specific species of fish. Fish consumption advisories will include what fish are safe to eat, how much of that fish is safe to eat, and how often it is safe to eat. So advisories also include information on what fish are not safe to eat and should therefore be avoided. And so this is what we have for the state of Indiana. So if you go to ISCH Fish Consumption Advisory on in.gov, you will come across a map that looks like the photo I have on the left. And you can scroll anywhere across the state of Indiana and zoom into a body of water, a creek, anything that you are going to be fishing in and see if that water is safe. There are places in Indiana that show up as red, which means do not eat. And so that is something really important to know. And so I picked on the Big Walnut Creek Advisory here in Putnam County, Indiana, which is where I'm coming from. And so with our Big Walnut Creek, I zoomed in and it gave me two different advisories. And so we have the sensitive population advisory and the general population advisory. And so the sensitive population is for females under the age of 50 who are at risk of becoming pregnant and any young children. And then our general population is just more general than the sensitive population. And so you can see for the sensitive population, it, for example, says channel catfish, 1 meal per week is what's recommended. And that is because catfish does contain mercury. And so it is recommended to not consume more than 1 meal per week if you're a sensitive, under the sensitive population. But channel catfish on the general population has an unrestricted consumption. And so you will want to find the specific body of water that you're going to be fishing in, but also you're going to want to look for the fish that you're catching and keeping and how much is safe to eat, whether it's 1 meal per week or 1 meal per month or whatever that might be. If you do come across the body of water that is red and says do not eat, it will say consumption not recommended instead of exact answer like these do here. And so now that we've caught our fish, we're going to get them home and we are going to prepare it and dress it. And talking about mercury and other contaminants and parts of the scales of a fish, contaminants can be removed by removing the fat, the skin, and the organs of the fish. And so when you are dressing a fish, you want to make sure that you're removing everything besides the meat that you're keeping. And it is important to know that washing fish will not remove the contaminants. So you do not need to wash your fish before you're cooking it. The only way to guarantee that contaminants and bacteria are removed is by cooking your food to the correct internal temperature. And so now we're going on to storing fish. And so when you are storing fish in the refrigerator, it actually can lose its freshness very quickly. You want to store it in the coldest part of your refrigerator and allow the air to circulate very freely around the package. You want to store uncooked fish below ready-to-eat foods. So you should not have your fish at the top of the refrigerator above things like lettuce that you're going to make for a salad that's not going to be cooked or anything like that, because if it drips, that could cause cross-contamination. And so also how to freeze fish. We want to make sure that we are wrapping our fish airtight in some type of aluminum foil or a heavy duty freezer bag and storing it at 0 degrees or lower for no longer than 4 to 6 months. If you do store it longer than 4 to 6 months, you cannot guarantee the freshness and the quality will be what it was when you caught your fish. You never want to refreeze fish. So if you get it out and think you're going to cook it for dinner and you don't get to it, you don't want to put it back in the freezer. You want to go ahead and cook it and then chill it correctly and use it as leftovers, or you're going to need to throw it out because we do want to be careful with the bacteria and the contaminants that come with catching fish. And so thawing frozen fish, I want to make sure we highlight this because that's a little different than meat and poultry. And so with fish cooks more evenly if thawed completely before cooking. And so you want to keep your fish frozen until you're ready to cook it. If your fish is packaged like in a freezer bag, you want to remove the packaging before you thaw it and thaw it until the fish is icy, but no longer hard. It doesn't have to have all of the ice melted off of it. You do want to avoid, as best you can, to thawing the fish in the microwave because it can thaw unevenly. For best quality though, you should just maybe put it in the refrigerator overnight to thaw out. If you do want to unthaw it quickly, it's recommended that you put it in a plastic bag and run it under cold water instead of using the microwave. But if you use the microwave, your best option would be putting it on the defrost setting and only defrost it until it's just still icy, but a little bit pliable. And you want to make sure that you do cook it immediately. If you have fish in a vacuum package, if that's how you processed your fish when you caught it, you want to open your vacuum package before thawing. But by opening the package while thawing it in your refrigerator, you're actually going to help reduce the risk of foodborne illness by taking it out of the vacuum package and letting it thaw out. So that's a really important step to do if you are someone that vacuum packages. And so next we have kind of how to know if your fish is still good, or even this can actually apply to fish that you're buying fresh at the grocery store as well. But you want to smell and feel your fish. So your fish should have a fresh and mild odor, and it should be very firm to the touch and spring back into place. Fish tastes fishy when it hasn't been handled properly. So if you can see your fingerprint, or if it has a strong odor when it's thawed, your fish is old and you should throw it out. If your fish is frozen, look for signs of frost or ice crystals. That is a sign that the fish has been stored for a long time, or it's been thawed and refrozen. Either way, you do not want that, and it's probably best for the quality and the safety of your fish to go ahead and throw it out instead of trying to use it. And so now with cooking fish, your fish should be cooked until it's flaky and it reaches 145 degrees. So that's actually, if you've been following along with our other webinars, this is the lowest temperature we've gotten to, 145 degrees. So it's really important to use a calibrated meat thermometer to ensure proper cooking. And for fish, you really don't want to overcook your fish. And so once you hit that 145 degrees and you're using your food thermometer, your fish is cooked to a safe temperature, and you can actually be done cooking it and it won't dry out as much. You should allow about 10 minutes per inch of thickness until your fish is white and flaky. And so obviously if it's thicker, it's going to take longer, but we really want to work on having nice, moist and tender fish, and getting to the ability to not overcook it. And so another way to tell if your fish is getting done is for watching it to become opaque. But like I said, the only way we can guarantee our fish is cooked fully is by using that food thermometer. And if you have leftover fish, it can be saved in the refrigerator in a tightly sealed container, but it actually should be consumed within 3 to 4 days. And so if you do go a while, a week or so after you've cooked it, it's likely not safe to keep that fish on hand anymore, just because of the bacteria and contaminants that come with wild caught fish. And so now kind of moving into the health aspect of why we should eat fish. Fish is actually a really healthy choice. It's a protein that contains vitamins, minerals, and omega-3 fatty acids, and is part of a healthy, balanced diet. So many fish that we can catch here in West Central Indiana are very nutrient dense, and they provide more nutrients per calories consumed than other meat products that we can find. Fish are a very healthy source of lean protein and a part of a healthy, balanced diet according to the American Heart Association. So 3 reasons why fish are an excellent choice would be that they're heart healthy, and they boost our brains, and they are good for our muscles. And so according to the USDA, adults should eat about 8 ounces of fish per week. That breaks down to about 2 4-ounce servings. And so for a mental picture of how much fish that would equal, that is about 4 ounces is about a size of a deck of playing cards. And so it'd be 2 decks of playing cards would be the amount of fish that is healthy to consume in a week's time. And so talking a little bit more about the omega-3s in fish, I'm sure you've heard that come up before. Scientific studies have shown that consuming omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA found in fish as part of a healthy diet have a lot of health benefits. And so we're going to kind of talk about some of those. But first, fish can improve your heart health because of the omega-3s that it can help reduce your risk of heart disease. It also helps to build muscle because the omega-3s and the protein in fish can help build and repair your muscles. Protein is a building block for all of our muscles inside of our body. All of our cells need protein, but we actually don't make protein for our body. We have to get it through what we eat. And so it's great to include fish as some of the protein in your diet. Fish is also known for its boosting brain function. DHA is one of the omega-3s in our brain, and DHA is to the brain as calcium is to the bones. So it's essential for brain development, function, and cell regulations. Scientists have actually studied that DHA increases the blood flow in our brains and during mental tasks, and improves memory and mental sharpness. So that's a great aspect when we talk about including more fish into our diets. Fish can also aid children's brains and eye development because of the DHA. Especially in pregnant mothers who are helping a growing baby. It's great to include some amount of fish and seafood into your diet while you are pregnant. Fish can also help fight inflammation, and so it has some anti-inflammatory properties, and then also helps to reduce the risk of depression. Studies show that people who eat fish are actually 20 to 30% less likely to experience depression than their peers. And so when we think of when people think of fatty fish, they might think of anchovies or salmon. And these fish definitely do have noticeable amounts of omega-3s. But I did want to mention that some fish that we find here in West Central Indiana, like walleye, carp, and catfish, are also quite high in omega-3s. And so you can see that walleye has 500 to 1,000 milligrams, which is a great amount that we can find here just local to us. And so talking about the nutritional benefits of fish, I couldn't find a comparison of fish that we can find here in Indiana, but we can see that fish has lean, low calorie, high quality sources of protein, and it contains essential nutrients and amino acids, especially omega-3s. So not only is fish a brain food, but it also can positively contribute to heart health, children's growth and development because of the vitamins and minerals that it provides. So the natural diet of wild caught fish contributes to a nutritious lean fish. And so you can see kind of the difference of domestic and wild caught fish. There's really not as big a difference in the other types of species that we've talked about in this webinar series, but it is important to mention that it does provide a lot of vitamins and minerals. And so our first recipe, I found a bluegill chowder from the Eat Midwest Fish website, and I'm going to provide you all with a link to that website. So this is kind of a play off of clam chowder or something like that. And you actually don't have to just use bluegill, but we have other, you can use other types of fish in it as well with the recipe. And so our next recipe is walleye and mushroom, and we actually are going to listen and watch a little cooking demonstration here.
Welcome to another episode of Local Fish, Local Flavors. Welcome to another episode of Local Fish, Local Flavors. Today, I'm so excited to have the chance to walk you through how to cook the oh-so-delicious dish, walleye and mushrooms. For this recipe, you will need salt, pepper, a red onion, mushrooms, 1 lemon, butter, and our featured ingredient, fresh, skin-on walleye fillets. To get started, preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, prepare your ingredients. You will need 1/3 of a cup of fresh mushrooms, 1 tablespoon finely chopped onions, 6 to 8 tablespoons melted butter, and 1 tablespoon lemon juice. In a shallow baking dish, mix the melted butter, lemon juice, salt, and pepper. Dip the walleye fillets in the butter mixture. And place them in a shallow baking dish. Cover the fillets with mushrooms. onions, and the remaining butter mixture. Now it's ready to bake. The baking time depends on the thickness of the fillets. We will set our timer for 10 minutes, even though it could take 15 to 20 minutes to cook. You will know when your fillets are done when the muscle segments start to separate when you apply a little pressure. Today, we'll cut our fillet into individual portions and serve it with quinoa, corn, green beans, and a wedge of lemon. Happy cooking! We hope to see you soon.
So hopefully you thought that recipe looks as delicious as I think that it did. And that is also from the Eat Midwest Fish website. So I really encourage you to get onto that website and kind of look around at the different recipes and information that they have on there. But while we're finishing up, I just like to end with the presentation of our game. And so just kind of highlighting of all the work that you do to catch your fish and dress it and prepare it and cook it, to not skip the step of making it look nice on a plate and appealing. But with fish, we do want to caution our guests at our dinner table to be cautious about fish bones and chewing carefully. That's one thing that you can do if someone has had a negative experience with eating fish before. You do want to make sure that they are aware of that possibility, because you've taken all that time to get the fish onto the dinner table. And so you want to make sure everyone has a great chance to enjoy it. And so we have a couple of minutes left here to answer any questions. And I believe Jenna is also going to put a link to that voluntary survey into our chat box. And if you would take the couple extra minutes that we have here to fill that out, it would, like I said, be really appreciated. But my contact information is on the side. If you do have any specific questions, I'm happy to take them and answer them.
So Abby, you do have one question so far. They're wondering if you could speak more about why opening a freezer bag for thawing is recommended. That seems like cross-contamination could happen with the open bag.
Yes, and so what they are saying with opening that freezer bag or a vacuum packed bag is because there also could be contaminants that you had on the outside of your fish inside of the bag when you were preparing it to be frozen. And so taking it out of that and letting it thaw, but doing it like in a bowl or something to where it's not going to leak or cross-contaminate other things is best. And so I also see that I had a private question come in, and I will answer that as well. And it says, so if you don't live in Indiana, where would you go to find the fish consumption guides for your state? And so the answer for that would be to go to your state's government website, or you could, I would also recommend, if you cannot find it on there, to contact your state's cooperative extension service, and they will as well be able to guide you for the specifics of finding the fish consumption guidelines for your state.
No other questions have come in so far.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope that you learned a little bit about fish and how to best prepare it safely, but also for some great flavor. If you're watching this recorded, we will have the link to the survey underneath the YouTube video and for you to click on. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Abby, for presenting today.